Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we stand for world-class education and hope and inspiration. Sometimes there's a little bit of entertainment as well. Who doesn't like a good laugh, right? So our show today is Authentic Achievements, and our topic is embracing fear as our friend. And of course, we have the creator of this show, Kim-Adele Randall, who's going to join us and talk us through this. Welcome, Kim-Adele. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, it's so good to see you. It's been a little while.
I know it's been too long. It always seems like forever, doesn't it? I know we say it's going to just be a month, but we're a little bit out this week because I was held up last week. So thank you for accommodating the change.
Absolutely. So for anyone who's joined us for the first time, this show is typically the first Friday of each month, and it's at 9 a.m. Eastern time, which is 2 p.m. British Summer Time. And soon you're going to be changing. What is it, October that the time changes?
Yeah, that's right. So October, we move back to Greenwich Mean Time. And it always throws me. And our timing is usually a week or so out from America, so and actually from New Zealand. So I always end up with a period where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to go back to like time checker again to work out what time zone I'm on.
You're sort of in limbo for that 1 week. Yeah. So Kim-Adele, for people who don't know you, you've helped many, many people across the world. And not only are you an incredible TEDx speaker, and we watched your TEDx speech here, which was phenomenal, but you're a best-selling author. You're also a coach and a strategist, and you're somebody who has been through quite a lot in your life. And when I talk about fear, you know what fear is all about. And yet you've been able to walk through that, open the door, and come out on the other side. So tell our audience a little bit about what fear was to you in the past versus what it means to you now.
Oh, fear in the past has been something that has been really debilitating. You know, there've been moments in my life where I just didn't know how to go on. I didn't know how to continue. I mean, I often joke that if I were ever to write my memoirs, it would be 3 divorces, a stalker, an evil and a critic. To throw into that, I've had 3 potentially life-threatening illnesses, 2 car accidents, a hurricane. So there's been plenty of opportunity for me to face my fear. And in my most melodramatic moment, I remember laying in tears on the kitchen floor, thinking, I just don't know how to breathe. And clearly I did know how to breathe, and I'm still breathing, and it's been 6 years since that particular episode. But in that moment, the fear was all encompassing, that my life had just imploded. Everything that I had thought I understood wasn't what I thought it was. And so overnight, in that particular situation, I became an unemployed single mum of 1 facing surgery, literally overnight. And I was like, that's not what I expected. And I was so lost. And all I could think about was what I was fearful of, until I realized what else could really go wrong. I mean, there wasn't really much else that could be taken from me. And then I was very, very, very fortunate. My little girl, who anybody who's watched this show before knows is my absolute North Star, and she was 1 at the time, and she cried. And I remember thinking in that moment, she didn't ask for any of this. She didn't ask to be born, and she needs me. So I've got to find a way of being what she needs, of doing everything that she needs. And so I focused on the things that I could do. I focused on, if I'm honest, we all have a goal. My goal at that time was to adult appropriately for 12 hours. And that may not seem like a particularly impressive goal to anybody watching, but in that moment, if I could do that, that's what success looked like. And then you start to move forward, you start to evolve. And I went on a 6-year discovery into understanding why we let fear take such hold of us. And actually, what is it that drives us to believe that? And I think, for me, one of the things that I really identified in that is, if we think about it, the thing that we're hopeful for, the thing that we wish would happen, is something we've created. Hasn't happened yet. We've had to imagine it. We've had to make it up. But the same is true of what we're fearful of. What we're fearful of hasn't happened yet. And so we've created it in our brain, the same brain that created the thing we're hopeful for. And yet we choose to believe that the thing that we're fearful of is more credible and more likely than the thing that we're fearful of. And it quite simply is our silent delaying tactic. Because actually, I wonder if it's not our darkness that scares us most, it's our light. It's the fact that we might be good at this. It's the fact that we might be destined to do more. And that feels egotistical. And we're taught ego's bad. And so we pull ourselves back into that fear. And it happens from childhood, I think. I'm going through this with my little girl at the moment. And when she wakes up and she's had a nightmare because there's monsters under her bed, I used to go and reassure her that there's no monsters and there's nothing for her to worry about, until I read an amazing book called The Whole Brain Child. And it helped me to understand that in doing that, what I'm doing is invalidating her feelings. I'm stopping her from being able to work through that fear. So the fear has to be resolved by somebody else. And that's what she'd carry into her adult life. Instead, what the book teaches us is that we should acknowledge that emotion, talk to her about it, say, oh my goodness, that must be so scary. How's that making you feel? And discuss it in a bit more detail before you find the solution for her, and help find the solution together. So, it must be really scary, and talk to me about that. And then what was happening. So really let her experience those emotions and that fear, and then talk through, how might we address it? Would it be useful if we look together under the bed to see if there's monsters? And then reassure her at the end, there are no monsters, but I can understand how scary it must have been when you thought there were, so that she starts to learn that how she feels and the emotions that brings are valid. And she can trust them, because I think if we can teach that trust when they're children, we're going to give them that resilience when they get older.
Wow, you shared so much, and I just learned from what you just said. So that was really helpful for me. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. I think we learn every day, don't we? I often say about my grandparents' great advice, which was live each day as if it's your last, and one day you'll be right, and make sure every day is a school day. And I love learning, and I think the more we learn, the more that we can overcome these things. And for me, I've just done a mission statement with my little girl, Scarlett. So we've got a family mission statement, which is to live a life of passionate curiosity, and to pass our thoughts, words, and deeds through the lenses of, is it kind? Is it honest? And does it add value? And the reason for that is not just, is it kind, is it honest, and does it add value for the people that we're dealing with, but also, is it kind, is it honest, and does it add value to us? Because I spent many years, as I've shared before on the show, where I wasn't very kind to myself. I was extremely kind to everybody else, almost, I've been told, to the point of being overly nice, to the point that people thought, it can't be true, she can't be that kind. But actually what I was doing was just being extremely unkind to myself. And so what I've learned in the past, well, 50 years of kind of really delving into this is to try and create a life of curiosity. So to be curious about everything, curious about why I think something, curious about why somebody else thinks something, because our brains were pre-designed to leap to judgment. And quite rightly, they were designed when actually we had to work out whether or not it was safe or we were going to get eaten. And so we needed to be able to make those snap decisions. But these days, we're less likely to be in fear of being eaten, thank the Lord. And so instead, we need to be able to give ourselves some space to be able to look around the problem and see what alternative views there might be. And curiosity is a great way of doing that. Asking yourself, I wonder what it is that makes that so likely. I wonder what would happen if the opposite were true. So the more that we can question, and for me personally, one of the things I try and avoid is why questions. And the reason for that is why can sometimes feel a bit judgmental. And so we will leap to a judgment to shut that piece down. So instead, using some of the others, like how is that? What is it about this that makes it so important or so scary or so detrimental? How might I find an alternate way past? What is it that it's going to do for me? What's it going to make that's important? It allows us to play on a different part of the brain that will enable us to really dig underneath and give ourselves the opportunity to see that the opposite might also be true. The thing we know is that we live in a world of polarity. For every up, there's a down. For every left, there's a right. Without a left, there can be no right. Without an up, there can be no down. So without fear, there can be no hope. So once we learn to embrace it and make it our friend, what we're really doing is looking at it and saying, okay, this is what I don't want to happen. What do I want to happen? Because that is probably one of the biggest things that I see when I'm coaching people is they're very clear what they don't want, but they've not been really clear on what they do want. And when we embrace that fear, we get real clarity on what it is we do want. And that's where we head.
Thank you so much. You know, I was a couple of things I wanted to say about what you mentioned before and then what you just mentioned. So I'll go with before. But you mentioned that when you were going through what you're going through, you had Scarlett. And so you had someone else that needed you. What about for people out there they're literally alone? You know, during the pandemic, a lot of relationships broke up and people are thinking, it's just me. And I'm terrified and I'm just going to give up. What if you're single and alone? What can you do to get yourself out of that mindset?
Oh, that's such a great question, Dr. JACALYN. And I think, you know, we've all had those moments. Before I had my little girl, you know, I had those moments where I was single and alone and thought, what impact would it have? There's nobody else here to do it. But none of us are an island. There is always somebody that needs something from us, or whether that's they just want to be our friend, or we're their child, or we're able to, you know, to add some value to them. And people like to add value. I think one of my biggest lessons in life was learning to ask for help. That was one of my greatest fears, was having to ask for help, or having to admit that I couldn't do everything. And yet I knew I couldn't do everything. I was talking to somebody earlier today and said, you know, we keep telling ourselves that we've got to be the superhero in our life. And that's quite a daunting task. But I don't know many superheroes that don't have a sidekick. So I think for me, it's looking for that and saying, find your sidekick. Don't feel you've got to be that superhero all on your own, because I promise there's other people out there that are feeling exactly like you are. And for me personally, when I was in those moments, I looked for what was the one thing, no matter how small, but what was the one thing that I could do. And I just made myself do that, because before you know it, you start to change your vantage point and solutions come into view. I think we can get stuck in paralysis analysis, where we can't see the whole picture. And because we can't see the whole picture, we don't make a move at all. And if life's taught me anything, it's that it's a little bit like doing a jigsaw without the box. You don't know what picture you're creating. All you can do is try and find the next piece that fits and trust the process.
Trust the process. Absolutely. We do have a comment from one of your followers on LinkedIn, Janae Adam. Love this, Kim.
Thank you.
Kim, I also want to just talk about the fact that if we're able to take another breath, this moment shall pass. And whatever it is that we're in at the moment may seem that it's absolutely horrifying. And it could definitely be a horrifying situation. At some point, it's going to stop. And so for me, what I've been able to do is, and it's taken a lot of work, and I didn't even realize how far I was on the other side. I am always looking for solutions. And I used to be highly emotional, and I couldn't actually clear my mind. And now I'm much less emotional because I'm looking for the solution. Not that I'm a robot, I'm not walking around like a zombie, but what are your thoughts about how to balance that between looking for a solution and keeping your emotions in check, and on the other side, not being so remote and so much like a robot?
It's another great point, Dr. JACALYN, because I think sometimes we can get lost in the balance of that. And I have had leveled at me before that it's all right for you because you can be quite robotic with this stuff. You can kind of parcel your emotions up. And I was like, it isn't that I parcel them up, it's that I acknowledge that they might not always be helpful. And what I mean by that is, if life's taught me anything, it's that people don't hurt you on purpose. And I say that despite many people, if they knew my story, would go, can they kind of hurt you on purpose? I don't think they did. I don't think people do hurt us on purpose, with obviously exceptions, as there are for every rule. I think people are just dealing with their own pain and they don't consider us, and therefore we become collateral damage. So when we start to tell them all of our emotion, it just adds fuel to the fire, because they're already dealing with their own pain and now you're making them deal with yours. So for me personally, I've learned how to go, my emotions need to be dealt with, but is this going to be the best way to deal with them? Or is it going to be easier to find the solution to this issue, and then to find the time to sit with my emotions? And for me, I journal about them, as they need to come out. You need to be able to cry and not tell yourself you've got to pull yourself together. It's okay. Sometimes we just need to release that. We need to let it go. And I think once we find a way of being kind to ourselves and saying, this works for me, it may not work for anybody else. They may need to find a different way of being able to handle that emotion. But I think we've got to find that way of creating self-care, which is being able to acknowledge what we feel allows us to work through it. So even though I feel really lost, I feel like I don't know how to make the next move, just in acknowledging that out loud allows our subconscious brain to realize that we've got a problem that wants solving. So it will then start to help find things that we can do, that we can look for. And there's an old technique, which is when we get really stuck in a problem and we just don't know how to deal with it. You write it down as a question to yourself. So you write it in a book as a question, whatever it is you're trying to solve, and then you close the book and walk away. And you trust that your subconscious brain is now working on that problem. And the reason that you write it as a question is when you come back to that book, you want to read it out loud, and that question will trigger. And the amount of times over the years where I've done that, and all of a sudden something I've sat banging my head against the wall going, I don't know how to fix this, I don't know how to fix this. And I've taken that approach and come back to it and gone, oh my God, there's so many ways I could fix this. Why was I finding it so hard before? And I was finding it so hard before because I wasn't in the right mindset to be able to be open to the solutions that might be available.
I really can see value in what you just described by writing that question down. I'm going to start doing that as well. And we do have a comment from someone else on your LinkedIn. Sama Atia, I hope I said that right. I like all of your issues. Thanks for being with us today. So what I wanted to share with you is something that just came up for me and see what your thoughts are about how I handled it. So I'm going through a very tough time personally, and I have a friend who has some collaborations that the person wants me to be interested in. And I listened and I said, listen, this is kind of a tough time. And then the person kept pushing and pushing. And finally I said, I don't really have the bandwidth right now mentally to give you what you need. And then the person really attacked me. So I basically said, okay, I'm not going to continue corresponding. I just said this to myself. I'm actually going to take a pause, a few days to assess how I feel. And then I'll reread what was written. And so I did. And then I came back to the person and said, hey, I needed to take some time. And now that I have the time, I want you to know I value you as a friend. Your friendship means a lot. I don't believe you're actually listening to what it is I'm trying to tell you. So what I'm going to say is, I feel like you're going through something. I don't know what that is, and I'd like to be there for you. I'm not able to do it right now. I can't give you my full attention right now, but I'd also like you to realize that I have feelings and you hurt them. And although I know you, and when you're reading this, you're going to be angry about it, but my feelings are valid because they're my feelings. You don't have to agree with them, but I'm allowed to have my feelings, and my feelings are that you've hurt me. And I haven't heard from the person. But what are your thoughts about that? Is it okay to say my feelings are valid? And
I think it's true. I mean, we talk often about kind of when conversations get heated in whatever way. And there's an amazing book called Crucial Conversations that I love. And it talks about the fact that in life, whether that's in business, in love, in everyday, there are moments when we have a conversation that becomes crucial. And what I mean by that is it feels a bit full of emotion. And that's usually because one or both people are fearful of something. They're fearful of being made to look silly, or fearful of being made to be wrong, or fearful of being sold to. It doesn't matter what we're fearful of. One or both of us are fearful. And so it takes you through these 5 steps, and they really work. So the first one is to share some vulnerability, which is, I feel really conflicted about having this conversation, and then share why you're doing it. But I need to, because actually right now I'm feeling undervalued. I value you. I'm not feeling the same. I don't think that was your intention, but it is your impact. And I'm committed to finding a solution for us to move through this. Because what that allows you to do is create a safe space, let the person know that they're not under attack, and then explain why it is that you need to have the conversation. Because if you don't have the conversation, if you don't share with them that they hurt your feelings, all you'll actually do is withdraw. So that relationship has no chance, because you're not going to keep turning up when you feel like you're being undervalued and that no one's listening to you. So for the other person, you're not giving them the opportunity to find a solution and a way through. I think in then doing that, you're now in this place that says, right, let's find a way that works for both of us. It allows you to keep coming back when somebody says, well, that's not going to work for me. It's go, okay, but we did say we'd find a way that worked for both of us. So what bits don't work and what bits do? And I think, that allows us to find that safe way through to handle that conflict. And we get told that we shouldn't share our emotion, but the reality is we do. So, if someone's hurt us or somebody's upset us, they've still hurt us and upset us, whether we tell them or we don't tell them. If we don't tell them, if we don't air it, if we don't allow it to go, then what we're doing is we're setting the grounds for how they treat us in the future. And somebody once shared with me this story of how it impacts people. So if you've never shared with somebody that actually, when you do this, you make me feel unlistened to, unrespected, unthought, unappreciated. then actually what happens is we store all of that, and we store all of that, and we store all of that. And they talk about the first time a dog bites. Well, it actually didn't bite you because that's the first time you did it. It bit you because you weren't learning from the fact it didn't like what you kept doing. And that's what happens when we allow people to keep treating us badly and we don't share it with them, is eventually, just like the dog, we bite. And they're taken by surprise because they're like, where did that come from? And it seems so out of context in the situation. But the reality is, it's been stored emotion for a long time that's just got to the final point where we blow.
I completely agree with you. We have another comment from Carrie Lynn Hodson. Hi, Carrie Lynn. Nice to have you with us. Setting boundaries is so important. I like that you said you value them. Now they need you, also value. Beautiful. Thank you for your comment. Kim-Adele, we've talked about this before, but I think it warrants repeating. I remember I was watching something on a program. I don't remember which program it was, but it showed you the inside of a female brain and the inside of a male brain. And inside the female brain, all the wires were all connected. And in the male brain, there were all these different compartments. And I feel since I left corporate and I started my businesses, I'm much more like the male brain. And I bring that up because I've been able to take the emotion and set it aside, and take the fear and set it aside, because I'm on a mission. And if I get caught up with the emotion or the fear, then I'm not going to be able to fulfill the mission. But many times in our mission, we have to deal with people, right? And people can be highly emotional. And so we cannot allow, I feel, I'm going to speak for myself, I cannot allow myself to get emotional so that it's like building. So what I work on every day is being like a trampoline where you're going to bounce off. Of course, trampoline, you're going to bounce back again. But is that the right approach? What do you think?
You're so right. We are all messy individuals because we are all full of emotion. And neuroscientifically, it's proven that our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So what happens is we emotionally react to what's going on before we react rationally to what's going on. And so sometimes the best option is to remove ourselves from that situation and compartmentalize those elements. Sometimes it's to just explore them a little bit more. And I think we've got to learn to trust our instincts about when's going to be the right time to do which one of them. And I remember doing a major redundancy program, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And the day before we went to do it, I was talking to the board and I said, they said, are we ready? And I said, we're as ready as we're ever going to be. And they looked horrified and said, do we need to postpone? I was like, no, it needs to be done, because if not, the organisation's going to go to the wall. What I mean is, we're about to tell 1,800 people that their job is at risk. And what I don't know and can never know is what's going on in all 1,800 lives. And therefore, what's this next piece of information going to do when added to that burden? And for me, that's really helped me in a lot of situations, which is, I don't know what's going on in their world. So I don't know whether or not the response that I'm getting is to what's happening with me, or just to the overwhelm of what's going on in their world. And so why not ask better questions? Why not be a little bit more interested in what's going on in their world first? Because then we've got a better insight into the fact that they may be having a really challenging time, that may be finding things really difficult. I remember with one particular client, a gentleman that in this a couple of board meetings, he had failed to do what was expected of him. The team were really frustrated because they were left picking up the slack, and they were getting really angry about the whole thing. And then we came to the next meeting, and in it, the gentleman that kept getting things wrong openly shared with the room how much he appreciated that they had given him the space, and he knew he hadn't pulled his weight, but that actually he was dealing with the terminal illness of his partner, and he hadn't shared that. And that was causing him to have no capacity to be able to do the role. And he couldn't appreciate enough that they had looked after him and taken the slack. They went from being really angry to being really apologetic. And I think for me, it was a real eye-opener into the fact that we don't know what's going on in somebody else's world unless we take a moment and ask.
I really applaud that. That's exceptional. You know, we practice elevated listening here. You're an elevated listener. And I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I was just sharing. I haven't been walking lately, but when I've been walking, I say hello to everyone. Hi, how are you? And I smile. And sometimes people just look at you blankly. So I said this to the other person. Why do you think that is? And the person said, because most people don't care how you're doing. So they don't want to say hello because they don't want to engage in any kind of conversation. And I thought, wow, that's pretty sad. Of course, that's one person's perspective. But I feel like when we do ask the question, we will get information that will be illuminating. It will be helpful in some way, instead of saying, oh, well, Kim-Adele was really mean to me today. Ask Kim-Adele, hey, what's going on with you? You've never been mean to me, by the way. You've never been mean to me. You're always a sweetheart. But that's the whole point, that I think people have a fear of asking a question and then getting information, and then they don't know what to do with the information. So I'll just share this. I'm going through a hard time personally, as you know. I told you I'm not going to say it on the, but people I know they don't want to contact me because they don't know what to say. And that happens so often. But when you're in this situation, you know people aren't contacting you. So now I have given grace and saying, I understand, because people don't know what to say, and they're afraid they're going to say something foolish, and then there'll be a problem. So what are your thoughts about asking questions? How do they become empowered to ask powerful questions?
Oh, great question. And I think we get fearful that we're gonna get given some information that we don't know what to deal with, and we've got really uncomfortable about silence. So we know that the minute one of us stops talking, the other one is expected to talk, which means we no longer really listen, because we're formulating our answer so that we don't have to live with that dreaded silence. But actually, when we start to get comfortable with the silence, which is sometimes just an acknowledgement to say, I don't have the words, but I can sit here and listen. Because listening is an act of love. Sometimes people don't want you to solve it for them. They just want you to hear them. Because at our base, we want to be listened to, we want to be understood, and we want to be respected. And if you ever had anybody just listen to you, not try and solve it for you, not try and give you all of the advice, but just listen, because I promise it's breathtaking. And it always makes you feel better. And that might sound really weird, because it's like, okay, Kim, all you've done is share what you already knew. Yeah, but somebody gave me time. They gave me time, and they gave me focus. And they were willing to get uncomfortable with not having the solution. And I know how much that takes to do for somebody. And so for me, it's always massively appreciated.
That is such a gift. And, you know, that's part of the elevated listening as well. And I think to myself, many times we'll turn to a stranger, or we'll actually engage with a stranger. It's not what's the word, preordained. It's just you're talking with someone and they say, how are you doing? And you just let it all out. And then they just listen to you. Because when you tell someone you know really well, they don't want to see you in pain. They don't want to see you hurting. So they immediately think, how can I fix the solution? Or something else that people will do is they'll immediately, you share what you had to share, and then they have to tell you that they know what happened to someone in their life. And you're thinking, okay, I'm happy to hear about that, but what about what I just shared? Mm-hmm. And these are things that happen all the time, and we feel that we're not being heard. And then when we're not being heard, we may take it out on the next person that we engage with, or the next person, or we may keep it inside and end up with some kind of illness.
Absolutely. And it stems from what we do with children. So, back to what I'm learning with Scarlett, the minute she cries, and is anybody out there who's got children, seeing your child cry breaks your heart. You just want to help them. You want to take it away. You want to feel that pain for them and make it stop. And so the first thing we'll do is try and calm them down. And actually what that does is teaches them that their emotions aren't valid. Instead, as I do with Scarlett at the minute, when she gets really upset, I'll sit with her and I'll say, tell me how you feel. And that must feel really awful. And if you just need to cry, my darling, you sit with me and cry. And that's okay, because I'm going to hold the space for you. Because what I'm trying to teach her for when she's older is that it's okay. And somebody, and the greatest act of love that they can give you is to hold the space for you while you find your way through whatever that emotion is. Because that's where we teach that resilience. And unfortunately, what we've been doing for so many years is trying to calm them, trying to go, oh, no, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. I got don't cry all the time when I was a kid. And it was done from an act of love, which is they didn't want to see me cry. But inadvertently, it teaches you to not be able to handle those difficult emotions and that it's not okay to feel them. And I think we do. Sometimes we'll go and share with strangers, or one of the things I love to do is if I see something, somebody's got nice hair or a nice dress or I've done something kind, is to actually face my fear of the fact that they might tell me I'm a weirdo and just go up and say, can I just say your hair looks really lovely today? I've yet to have anybody do anything but beam in response, because how nice is that when somebody took a moment out of their day to notice you, to notice something about you, and further to that, took the guts to share it with you, because that might just be the one thing you needed that day to make it a good day.
I totally love what you just shared there. And it's something that we talked about on another show is when you get that compliment, you don't have to come up with excuses. Oh, my hair. Oh, it's always horrible. I used to know. No, just say thank you. That is so nice. You made my day. Or we feel pressure to come up with something to say about the other person. And then it becomes like this. Thank you. I really appreciate you. And I really appreciate Carrie Lynn with the follow-up comments. Professionally, this is often what we as leadership executive coaches do for our clients. We listen, create a safe space, and allow clients to voice their concerns and share their frustrations. So often they come up with their own solutions. Yay, solutions. And then they are so surprised.
So
Love
true.
it.
So true. And it's because sometimes what we need is the space. We need the safe space to be able to think it through. And when you do that listening, and I know, Carolyn, you do this all the time with your clients, when we do that real listening and allow them the space to think it through, then actually they can find those solutions because they've got them, they're in them. But what we've done is not allow people to have the confidence to take the time to work it through and to be able to kind of have a sounding board as they work it through. Because sometimes, I've done this a lot, something that I've been telling myself for ages and it sounds really, really plausible. And the minute I say it out loud to somebody, probably helps that I kind of see their response to it as well. But I see for myself how limiting that belief was. And all of a sudden, other opportunities come flooding in. So I think it's really helpful for us to keep talking about these things and for us to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's one of our greatest fears, is that we're going to be uncomfortable, out of our depth and not know. And yet that's where our greatest learning comes from. Our biggest lessons in life didn't come from the times where everything went well. They came from the times where things went badly. And I've learned in my life that everything in it is a lesson, a blessing, or both. So when I'm not feeling blessed, I look for the lesson, because that's where the growth is, and that's where the opportunity comes to really take ourselves to the next level.
Once again, every point you make is fantastic. Should be a quote in and of itself. Something I wanted to share about being uncomfortable, and I purposefully put myself in uncomfortable situations just because I want to see how I respond. I've been working out just here in the home for the last while, and I've got this weight vest. It's 20 pounds, and it was just hanging on the front of I have a spin bike, and I haven't used it in a while. And I thought, I just don't really want to put it on, but something's telling me put the thing on. So I went and I got somewhere downstairs, I have these two, I call them fat belts. They're made out of the material that makes you sweat. So I put on the fat belt, I put on this fat vest, and then I put on the weighted vest. And I rode my bike for 2 hours. And I stood up and I sat down. It was really uncomfortable. That's why I'm bringing it up. It was so heavy. And I thought to myself, this is what it feels like to carry the weight of the world on your back. This is it. So how can you push yourself through? What can you learn from this? And then afterwards, I got off the bike and I saw these dumbbells that were my father's. He's been gone a long time, but they're 25 pounds each. I've never lifted that much. And I thought, I'm going to do some presses with the 25 pounds and the weight belt on. And you know what? Put my legs up in the air, and it was really uncomfortable, not like painful, you're going to get hurt. And I thought, you can do this because you're taking yourself to a new level. When you put these weights down and when you take this vest off, you're going to feel so much lighter. So we don't have to actually do this in real life, put the weighted vest on, but you can imagine once you walk through the door and you have a solution, how much lighter you're going to feel.
Well, we'll have, I love that story. We always have those conversations that we've been dreading, and how many of them go better than we thought? Almost all of them, because we spend all this time in anticipation of the dreadful conversation that we're going to have, plotting how horrible it's going to be and all of the doom and gloom that could go with it. And then you have it and you think, why didn't I do this 10 days ago? And what I would have done is give myself the gift of those 10 days that I've spent worrying about it, that have added no value to me and no value to the person that I was going to do. So I think we think things are going to be significantly more uncomfortable than they are. And then once we go through them, we're like, oh, actually, that wasn't that bad. You know, I pull a lot of things back to children, because I think, you know, as children, we learn some things that if you told me tomorrow I had to wake up and learn how to walk or talk or run or jump, I'd be overwhelmed. I think we all would. And yet at our most vulnerable, we did it. And so I started investigating that. Why is it that we did that? And I think it's for a couple of things. One, our kids believe they're just like us. If we can do it, they can do it, because they believe. But equally, we believe. We stand next to them and go, come on, you're nearly there. You've almost got it. But imagine how uncomfortable learning to walk was. Imagine how many times we fell over, but it didn't stop us. And it didn't stop us because the reason we were doing it was greater than the uncomfortableness of doing it. And I think for me, this is what we see when we see people that are leading mission-driven lives. They can push their way through the uncomfortable because the reason that they're doing it is greater than any level of uncomfortableness they're going to have to go through to get there. And so I think that's kind of the beauty in life, is to find our mission, to find the thing it is that actually we know that this is so important that we're willing to face the uncomfortable to achieve it.
Kim-Adele, always providing so much incredible content and wisdom, talking today about embracing fear as our friend. How can people reach out to you, and who would you like to contact you?
Of course. So you can get in touch with me at kim@kimadelerandall.com. You can find out what we're doing at www.authenticachievements.com, as you can see down below. My TEDx is also on turning fear into hope, which, if anyone's struggling, that hopefully will be helpful. And I help organizations and leaders who are wanting to really get out of their comfort zone and take their business to the next level. So if that's you, please do get in touch. I'd love to help.
Thank you, Kim-Adele. And a final comment from KERBECK. We've had KERBECK here on the platform as well. So hello.
Thank you, KERBECK.
Fantastic, ladies. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. All right. I look forward to seeing you next month, Kim-Adele, and I wish you a beautiful weekend.
Me too. And sending lots of love and support. You know where I am if you need me.
Yes. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for engaging with us. A couple of announcements before we close out. In case you are in the US of A or coming to the US of A, I've been invited to be a VIP speaker by Dr. Justina Motali at the World Summit on Women and Girls. This is the 20th through the 22nd of October. It's at City Hall in Philadelphia in the US of A. The second announcement is that if you haven't heard, we have expanded our platform. Not only are we on our destinations here on USA Global TV and radio, but we've also partnered with E360 TV. And so our co-hosts, our show hosts, have the option to take their program over on E360 as well. We stream simultaneously. So our platforms that we go to there are Amazon and Roku and Apple TV and Android devices through E360. So our first show to go there is A Woman's Prerogative, Discover Her Journey to Find Her Destiny. So we'll be live streaming on Mondays to both of the destinations. And we have 2 shows on Mondays. And this show is a group of women. It's a panel. And each week we have a panel discussion. So we used to have one show. And then because of the different time zones in New Zealand and in Africa, it wasn't working for all of our panelists to be together at one time. So everybody liked it so much. I said, okay, we'll do 2 episodes on Mondays. So please do join us for that. And then finally, I have a new book out. So if you're not aware, I have a number of right here children's books, which are all about listening. And our 5th one is coming out very soon. But these books are all featuring elevated listeners. So the people who are on the cover, the animals on the cover all represent real people who took my course, which is The Power of Elevated Listening. And then the listening mentor on the back is actually named Ella, and she represents my great niece. And my great niece is featured in each of the books. And here she is, a little sweetheart. And as the listening mentor, which is my title, I fly around the world. And then in book 6, I'm going into outer space to teach animals how to listen at an elevated level in various scenarios. So I have those books. I also have other nonfiction books. But the newest book is Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening, Solutions for Deeper Connections, Better Relationships, and More Authentic Conversations. This book came out this week in ebook format, pre-order. The actual book itself and the paperback and hardback will all be available on International Day of Listening, which is September 21st. And it hit Amazon bestseller list. I don't know where it is right now, but it's been there all week. And I'm super excited and thrilled. We actually have a cover update because we have a foreword that's been written by Keith Saltuyanis, and he's a writer at National Lampoon, best-selling author and founder of the school Improv LA. We interviewed him, and he wrote that we produced one of the best interviews he's ever been part of. He's been on Curb Your Enthusiasm, so many amazing, well-known productions, and so he's written the foreword for the book. So this title will be updated. So I'd love if you go over to Amazon, wherever you are in the world, go to Amazon the way you normally would, just type in my name, and you'll be able to download, to pre-order the ebook because they're not available till September 21st. And in the States, it's 21 of September. And you can pay 99 cents in the US. I don't know what it is outside the US, but it's filled with 2 quizzes so that you can test your knowledge about listening before. And then there's a quiz at the end to see what you really learned. There's also case studies and plenty of testimonials from people who have read the book and also people who have taken my course, The Power of Listening. And for those of you who are not aware, if you'd like to join our team at USA Global TV and Radio, we have a number of different teams. But one team that everybody here is on at USA Global TV and Radio is Elevated Listeners. So if you're interested and you want to ramp up your listening skills, I know you think you're a great listener. Everybody does. Anyone I ask, they tell me, yes, I can listen. I'm a 10 out of 10. I'm a 9 out of 10. And I'm thinking, I've just been talking with you and you are not. So there's no judgment there. But if we all learn how to listen at an elevated level, I'm still learning every day. This world will be filled with peace. That's what I promise you. So thank you so much. And thank you, KERBECK. I look forward to discussing with you and having you back on our platform. I appreciate you. All right, we're going to close out with a testimonial from one of our team members. Her name is Diane Floyd-Bame, and then we're going to watch her sponsorship. So thanks again for being here. We'll be back shortly with our next show. Bye for now.
Hello, I'm children's author Diane Floyd-Bame, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and Radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and Radio because I love positive messages. And who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too.